We can speak freely," Aunt Gloria snapped, pushing her designer sunglasses up as if we were on some beach, not inside a stuffy law office, waiting for Grandma's will to be read. "She only pretended to care for Mom," my cousin Beth added coldly. "Feeding her, bathing her, please. It was all for this moment. For the money." I didn't say anything. Not because I agreed, not because I was guilty, but because I knew the truth didn't need defending in a room full of people who had already made up their minds. That's the thing about silence. They mistake it for weakness. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Uncle Henry turned to the lawyer. "Can we get on with this? Or are we waiting for her to stop pretending she belongs here?" The lawyer, Mr. Dorsey, cleared his throat, glancing toward me awkwardly. "Actually, we're still waiting on one more person to arrive before we begin." "She can wait outside," Beth interrupted, flicking her wrist dismissively.
"She's not family.
"She's just the maid with a marriage license." My hands clenched in my lap, nails digging into my palm. It wasn't always like this. But ever since Grandma's health declined and I stepped in to care for her, when no one else did, they started to look at me like I was the threat. Because I didn't just sit next to Grandma during her worst nights. I held her hand. I cleaned up after her strokes. I listened to her cry about how everyone wanted her money, but none of them wanted her company. So no, I didn't argue. Let them believe what they want. The door to the office creaked open, and suddenly the air shifted. My husband, Jackson, walked in wearing a navy suit, his expression unreadable, but his eyes met mine like we were the only two people in the room. In his hand was a sealed manila envelope, marked in Grandma's shaky handwriting, to be read aloud, only if they try to erase her. Every conversation stopped. Even Aunt Gloria, who never shut up, was quiet now. Mr. Dorsey's jaw tightened as he stood. "Where did you get that?" "From the woman who raised her better than any of you ever did," Jackson said calmly. "My wife." He handed the envelope to Mr. Dorsey and placed a protective hand on my shoulder. "What is this?" Beth's voice cracked slightly. "Something she left behind," Jackson said. "Something none of you thought to look for, because you were too busy deciding who deserves what." Gloria stood abruptly. "This is absurd. She's manipulating you." Mr. Dorsey sliced the envelope open with a silver letter opener. Inside was a handwritten letter and a second envelope, which he read aloud slowly. "If they ever accuse her of pretending, if they ever try to write her out of this family, like they've done her whole life, read them this. And remind them who sat by my side when my hands couldn't move and my words no longer came easy. Remind them who loved me when I had nothing to give back but memories and tears. Remind them what real family looks like." The silence wasn't quiet, it was violent.
Thick.
Electric. No one moved. No one breathed. Until Mr. Dorsey spoke again. "Also included in this envelope is an updated will. It supersedes the previously known version. I will now read it aloud." Beth slumped in her seat. Gloria looked like she'd been slapped. Uncle Henry whispered, "She changed it. She rewrote it 2 days before she died," Jackson said, his voice now low and lethal. "While you were all busy posting photos with her on Facebook, pretending to care for likes, she was dictating this letter to make sure justice would still speak after her voice was gone." Mr. Dorsey cleared his throat. "To my granddaughter-in-law, Madison Grace Cooper, I leave my home, all my liquid assets, and the trust fund I'd once promised to my children, but could no longer, in good conscience, let them have. You were the only one who saw me, who didn't treat me like a burden or a piggy bank. And now it's yours." Beth gasped. Gloria shot up from her chair. "This is a lie. This is forged. This is manipulation. Madison. That's my name. And I still hadn't said a word. Because I didn't have to." My silence was louder now than any scream. And I could see it right there, in the way they stared at me like I'd just shattered their entire legacy. The legacy they thought was owed to them, not earned. Mr. Dorsey handed me the envelope. "She wanted you to have this. It's the only copy she insisted stay sealed. She didn't trust anyone else to protect it." As I opened it, tears filled my eyes. Not for what I gained, but for what they'd lost, long before today. They lost the woman who loved them, and they never even noticed. But I did. And now, I would carry her truth forward, quietly, fiercely, and in full view of every single person who tried to erase me. Beth was the first to speak after the will was read. Her voice was trembling, but laced with venom. "This can't be legal," she hissed, standing up so quickly her chair screeched against the hardwood floor. "There's no way Grandma would cut us out. We're her blood." Mr. Dorsey didn't flinch. "It's perfectly legal." She had full mental capacity. "We recorded the entire session, and I personally notarized it." She was manipulated. Gloria spat, pointing at me like I was a criminal. She was old.
Sick.
She didn't know what she was doing. I finally spoke. She knew exactly what she was doing. My voice was calm. Too calm, like the center of a storm. "You weren't there when she couldn't breathe at night. When she cried because her legs didn't work. When she forgot the day of the week and panicked thinking she was dying. I was. I saw her. I stayed. I loved her. That's what made me family. Not the blood in my veins." Gloria's jaw clenched. She turned to Jackson. "And you? How dare you barge in like some white knight?" Jackson narrowed his eyes. "Because unlike the rest of you, I don't sit back while my wife gets humiliated for doing the right thing. Madison didn't ask for any of this. She earned it." Beth flung her purse over her shoulder and stormed toward the door. "Enjoy your pity prize. You think money buys respect? You'll never be one of us." "I don't want to be," I said, and the door slammed shut behind her. But Gloria didn't leave. Neither did Uncle Henry. No, they lingered, hovering, watching, their faces twitching in quiet disbelief as if waiting for someone to say, "Just kidding," and take it all back. But no one did. Instead, Mr. Dorsey handed me a folder with documents, title deeds, account statements, and a ring box. Inside it was Grandma's wedding ring, delicate, worn, engraved on the inside. "All my love, M." My breath caught. I wasn't expecting that. "Your grandmother wore this every day until the night before she passed," he said. "She asked me to give it to you with this message. You'll know when it's time to wear it." I stared at the ring, feeling her presence heavy around me. Jackson leaned in close and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. But the truth?
No.
I wasn't. Because part of me still wanted them to apologize. To understand. To say sorry for treating me like I didn't matter. For pretending my love wasn't real just because it didn't come with a shared last name or a childhood of birthday parties together. But they wouldn't. People like that don't say sorry. They just get louder when they lose. That night, Jackson and I drove back to the house, Grandma's house, now mine. I hadn't been inside since the funeral. Everything still smelled like her. Cinnamon.
Wool.
Lavender soap. I walked through the living room, staring at the photo on the mantel. Me and her, smiling. Her hand over mine. It wasn't a posed photo. Jackson had taken it one afternoon, without us noticing. She was the only person who'd ever made me feel chosen. Loved for who I was, not who I was supposed to be. And now she was gone. Jackson placed a cup of tea in front of me. "You were incredible today. You didn't even flinch." I wanted to scream, I admitted. He nodded. "But you didn't. You made them listen. You honored her." I reached into the envelope again. There was another note, folded neatly. It read, "If they try to come for you after I'm gone, don't be afraid. They'll come with words, but you have the truth. They'll come with guilt, but you have love. They'll come with lawyers, so I left you one too. Her name is Camille. She's expensive and ruthless. You'll like her." I laughed, tears falling down my cheeks. Jackson smiled. God, I loved that woman. I wiped my eyes. Me too. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. They weren't going to let it go. And sure enough, the next morning, an envelope was shoved under the front door. No stamp, no return address. Just one line written in red ink. "We're not done." I stood there in the entryway, staring at the envelope on the floor. My heart thudded once, hard and cold, like the sound of a gavel dropping in court. Jackson picked it up, examining the handwriting. "They're escalating." He was right. Inside was a folded letter, typed. No signature. But the words bled with rage. "This isn't over. You may have fooled the lawyer, but you won't fool the judge. We've hired counsel. We're challenging the will. Consider yourself on notice." I didn't flinch. I expected this. But I felt it. That pang of disappointment in my chest. The kind that shows up when you still hold onto a sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd surprise you with decency. "They won't stop until they destroy you," Jackson said, his voice taut. I looked at him. "Then we don't give them the chance." I called Camille that afternoon. She picked up on the first ring. Her voice was brisk, low, and precise. "Camille L. Mercer, Estate Litigation. How can I help?" "This is Madison Cooper, Margaret Harding's granddaughter-in-law." There was a pause.
Then,
The woman she trusted. I exhaled sharply. "They're challenging the will. I need help." "I've been expecting your call. Your grandmother was very clear in her instructions. I have every document. The original recordings. Her signed health evaluations. Everything is time-stamped and witnessed." My fingers trembled with relief. "So, we're protected?"
No.
"We're prepared," Camille said. "There's a difference. And I don't lose." That night, I sat in the kitchen of Grandma's house, flipping through her journals. I hadn't read them before. I didn't want to invade her privacy. But now they were mine, and she'd left a note on the cover of one. For Madison. "So you'll never forget how strong you are." I read through her words like I was speaking to her again. She wrote about her regrets, giving too much to people who only took. She wrote about the loneliness in her bones when the house was full but her heart was empty.
And she wrote about me.
She sat with me even when I forgot her name. She never corrected me with shame. Just smiled and told me stories until I remembered again. She smells like fresh rain and speaks like forgiveness. She's the daughter I didn't know I needed. My throat tightened. Every piece of love I gave her came back to me in those pages. And I realized then, this battle wasn't about money.
It was about dignity.
About defending a love that had already been questioned too many times. The next morning, the subpoenas arrived. Gloria, Beth, and Henry were officially contesting the will, on the grounds of undue influence. Camille didn't even blink. "Let them come," she said, reviewing the paperwork. "They're walking into a courtroom with ego. We're walking in with evidence." But I wasn't ready for what happened next. A week later, while Jackson was out getting groceries, I noticed a shadow through the curtain. Someone was standing on the porch. When I opened the door, Beth was there. She didn't look smug anymore. She looked tired.
Pale. Shaken.
She pushed past me into the foyer before I could stop her. "I need to talk to you," she said. I crossed my arms. "Now you want to talk?" "She lied to all of us," Beth said, turning slowly. "Grandma, she lied." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" She told me she'd left the house to me. When I visited her 6 months ago, she said I was her favorite, that she'd make sure I was taken care of. I believed her. I let out a bitter laugh. "You visited once in 6 months. You posted a photo on Instagram with the caption, 'Hanging with the old bird. Still kicking.' That's the extent of your love." Beth's eyes glistened. "I don't know why she chose you." I stepped forward. "Because I didn't show up for appearances. I showed up when her mind was slipping and she screamed in the middle of the night thinking she was 9 years old again. I showed up when she forgot how to chew. When she wept because she thought she was a burden. I cleaned her bedsheets while you were in Cancun." Beth's shoulders shook. I didn't know it was that bad." "You didn't care to find out." She looked at me then, not with hatred, but with shame. And maybe, for the first time, understanding. "I just came to say," she whispered, "if you win in court, I won't fight anymore." I said nothing, because it wasn't about winning. It was about standing where I belonged and not moving when they tried to push me out. The courtroom wasn't glamorous like on TV. No marble floors. No dramatic lighting. Just worn-out chairs, tired carpet, and a judge who looked like he hadn't had lunch yet. But the tension in that room? It could slice bone. I sat on the right side with Camille, dressed in a navy blue blouse and black slacks. Nothing flashy, just quiet strength. Jackson held my hand beneath the table, his grip steady. Across the room sat Gloria in a sharp crimson suit, lips pursed like she'd swallowed a lemon. Henry fiddled with his tie, clearly sweating through his shirt. Beth sat behind them, head low, eyes glassy. She hadn't hired her own lawyer. She wasn't contesting anymore. She was just there. Judge Melrose cleared his throat. We're here to hear arguments on the challenge to Margaret Harding's last will and testament. I didn't listen to the rest. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the words. But Camille didn't flinch. She rose gracefully, handed the judge a stack of papers, and began. Your Honor, the opposing counsel claims undue influence. What they will fail to show is coercion. What we will prove is love,
Care.
and voluntary action. We have signed evaluations from her physician, a full audio and video recording of her reading and signing the will, and a record of financial transfers, none of which benefited my client prior to Margaret Harding's death. The judge flipped through the documents. The other attorney, a smug man named Randall King, stood next. Your Honor, we intend to demonstrate that my clients were manipulated by someone who had access to the deceased in her most vulnerable state, an outsider who took advantage of an elderly woman's mental fragility. Objection, Camille said, sharp as a blade. Calling my client an outsider is inflammatory and irrelevant. She was legally family. She was her caregiver. And she was loved. The judge lifted a hand. Sustained. Randall backed off, but I saw it in his eyes. He'd lost his opening punch. He wouldn't recover easily.
They tried to drag me.
One by one, Gloria and Henry took the stand. She isolated her, Gloria claimed. She made it hard for us to visit. She hid Grandma's condition from us, Henry added. We didn't know she was that sick. But Camille calmly played back video after video. Footage of Gloria ignoring Grandma's phone calls. Screenshots of Henry replying, too busy. Next month maybe. Voice messages from Grandma herself, asking me to keep visits short because she couldn't handle the drama anymore. Then the turning point. Camille brought up a video I didn't even know existed. Grandma, sitting in her favorite chair, smiling faintly as she looked into the camera. This is for when I'm gone, she said. In case they say Maddie made me do this. She didn't. I begged her to stay when everyone else left. I begged her not to give up on me. And if anyone tries to erase her from my life, play them this. The courtroom was silent. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I didn't cry.
I wouldn't give them that.
Even the judge looked shaken. I've seen enough, he said finally, setting his papers down. This will is valid. There's no evidence of coercion. Only overwhelming evidence of care. Challenge denied. The gavel dropped. It was over, but the fallout wasn't. As we stepped outside, reporters were waiting. Word had gotten out. Old money family torn apart by a contested inheritance. Cameras flashed. Microphones shoved forward. Madison, how does it feel to win everything? I turned, calm. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like defending someone I loved. Back at the house, Jackson and I sat on the porch, the late sun streaking across the old oak trees. I still hadn't taken the ring off my finger. Not the wedding ring Jackson gave me. Grandma's. I think it's time, I said. Jackson looked over. Time for what? I slipped Grandma's ring on my right hand. She said I'd know when. And I did. Because now the fight was over. But the healing? That was just beginning. Later that evening, a knock came at the door.
Beth.
Again. This time with something in her hands, a box. I found this in my mom's attic, she said softly. It's full of photos. Of you and Grandma. From when you first started helping her. I took it slowly, surprised. She really did love you, Beth said. And I see it now. I was just too selfish to understand it before. I didn't reply right away. Then I said, "You were angry. That's not the same as being evil." Beth nodded. "I'm trying not to be either." She turned to leave, but stopped at the edge of the porch. "You were never the outsider, Maddie," she said. "We were." A week passed. No lawsuits. No more letters. No surprise visits. Just quiet. Peaceful, strange quiet. I spent my mornings in Grandma's old garden, hands in the soil where hers used to be. Jackson would bring me coffee, kiss my temple, and let me be. I needed this silence to breathe after the war. Camille called. "The estate is fully transferred. Everything's in your name now." "Thank you," I told her, "for everything." "You don't owe me thanks," she said. You honored her better than any contract ever could. That night, I finally opened the last of Grandma's boxes. In it, her old recipes, a dried rose from her wedding bouquet, and a note I hadn't seen before. "If they ever forget who you are, let them. You never needed their approval. You only ever needed to remember who you were to me." I folded it and placed it in the drawer next to her ring. That weekend, I invited the neighbors over.
Just a small group.
People who used to wave at Grandma, who dropped off soup when she was sick. People who knew her. We sat under the porch lights, sharing stories, laughing, remembering. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't the girl who married into the family. I was Madison, the woman who stayed. The next morning, I walked through the house, sunlight warming the old floors, and whispered, "It's yours now."